If you have become comfortable discovering ancestors who need ordinances, printing their cards and taking them to the temple, you're probably ready to begin phase 2, where you gather information in between the discovery and connection process. In phase 1, you discover and then connect without gathering in between. In phase 2, you discover, then gather, and then connect. This approach is more fun and more rewarding. Once we discover ancestors who may need ordinances, we should spend a little time getting to know them and see if we can improve the information that's posted about them. We could ask ourselves questions like, can we correct or complete birth, marriage, and death dates and places? Is there information we need in sources that are already listed on the person page that has simply been ignored? Can we add record hints or sources from partner sites that provide and prove information about our relative? Can we find missing members of our relative's family, spouse, child, parents? Are there data problems that we can fix? Standardization, obvious mistakes, duplicates. When we discover green temples and complete the identified ordinances, we remove the neon sign that beckons people to come to our relative's person page. If we could have easily found a spouse, child, or parents, but ran our person to the temple without doing so, we make it less likely that others will discover our ancestors and complete their family. If you're going to engage in the gathering process, there's some tools that you'll need to be able to use. You need to be able to review posted sources. It's amazing how many times people add sources to a person page but don't use the information found in the sources. For instance, there are marriage documents and there are parents listed in the marriage document, but people don't add the parents from that marriage source. They just add the date of the marriage. There's children on a census record that weren't noticed and weren't added to the person. So you want to see if there's information already available in the posted sources that you can glean out and add to your person. You want to become competent at posting record hints. Record hints are a wonderful blessing to family historians nowadays. The church has its computer with its advanced search engine go through and look over the billions of records that Family Search has indexed, find likely matches for your person, and then post that record hint right there on the person page for you to determine for sure if it's a correct source and then add it. These record hints are 97% accurate. In other words, in 97% of the cases, the source does match the person that the computer has designated for it. So that's a great blessing and something we want to get good at posting and using. You also want to get to where you can, at least in a rudimentary way, gather sources from partner sites like Ancestry, MyHeritage, Find My Past, and American Ancestors. You want to be able to add or change information that's on the person page. You want to standardize information. Standardizing information means that the formatting in the information that's been typed in isn't able to be recognized by the computer. And so it's more than just having a uniform look and conforming to a kind of formatting. There's times where the computer, just for whatever reason, says, I can't read what's written there, and therefore I can't use that information to go and find you more record hints. And so we want to standardize, yes, to be in conformity throughout the tree, but also to make it so that our search engine is empowered as much as possible. We want to be able to add family members. You'll discover people and you want to know how to add them to your individual's family. A very important skill is merging duplicates, because you'll be surprised how often you will find a duplicate, especially after you start adding in information and sources. Then a new duplicate will appear, and you would have taken this person to the temple, but the duplicate that's been found had already had the temple work done, and you would have just been duplicating work. Finally, the last skill that you'll need is to be able to know how to go and get help when you run into something that you just don't know how to do. There are times where the ordinances that are listed, you can't understand why you can't request them. It appears that all the information that's needed is there, and yet there's a message that you need to contact Family Search if you want to request those ordinances. And so you need to be able to know how to contact Family Search and get the help that you want. In the other video that described phase 1 of discovery, that we went to the Ordinances Ready tab, and we had the search engine find us 4 people that needed baptisms. The first one was Ara L. Braz. I wanted to just show you what I would do before I would take Ara to the temple. I can review my relationship just by clicking on it, and then I can see how I am related to him. But the important thing to do is to click his name, and then to go ahead and open him. I'm going to open him in another tab. And when I go to his person page, this is where the adventure begins, and we start to have fun being able to see if we can improve the information that we have on him. So I conduct a real quick overview of what I have already available and what's missing. And the key is to say what is missing. So as I look at his vital information, there's no birthplace and there's no death place, and the birth date's pretty inadequate. I come on down a little bit further to the family members, and I notice that I have a good marriage date, and I have a spouse, I have 1 child, and I have no parents. So in my mind, I'm thinking I want to find parents, see if he has any other children, and I want to see if I can find a death place and a birthplace, as well as maybe a better birth date. So the first place that I want to look is in the existing sources that have already been posted about him. All you do to do that is click on the tab that says Sources, and you then kind of review the sources that are available. I notice that I've got a marriage record, 2 census records, and 2 death records, or these are compiled information about the death. And so the place that I wonder if it'll tell me where he was born. I'll try with the marriage information, because a lot of times that gives me that information, and yes, it does. Ara, who married Mabel, was born in Knoxville, Iowa. And so now it doesn't give me his birth date, but it does give me Knoxville, Iowa. So if I go back and Mabel Halverstadt is his wife, I'll be able to put in Knoxville, Iowa. So let's go back to him, scroll down, Mabel Halverstadt, then I come back up here, and I'm going to come to his birth date, and I'm going to edit it. I don't have any better information about the birth yet, but I can, in the place, say, what was it again? I can just look over here, Knoxville, Iowa. And you notice that I don't have to capitalize necessarily, and the computer finally says, oh, okay, I've found a Knoxville, Marion County, Iowa, United States. This is the correct formatting. Just putting Knoxville, Iowa wouldn't have been correct. And so all I have to do to change it now is just click down here, and it puts that right information in there. As long as I'm here talking about standardization, let's say that this 1892 didn't have the little decal and wasn't standardized. All I would need to do is come to the end of it, click, put in a space, and the computer comes up with a suggestion. And if I had it looking like that, and the computer suggested this, I could click it and it would standardize it. So, so anytime that you want to standardize, you just click behind what you've typed, put in a space, and the computer comes up with suggestions for you. Sometimes you won't want, none of the suggestions are as accurate as what you have, but the computer couldn't find the cemetery, the specific cemetery you're talking about. If you click on what you have, the computer will use this to search, but this will stay where you've typed it. So that's how to standardize information as you're putting it in. Now I added information, and so I need to give a reason why I added it, and I'm just going to say verified in marriage record. And then I'm going to save it. So that quickly, with sources that were already added, I've improved his birth information. Now, if I go back to those sources, you'll see that I've got two death things, the billion graves and the find a grave. And so if I click on both of them, they give me birth date, death date, but they don't give me death place. And then this one of find a grave, the same thing. It gives me where he was buried, but it doesn't give me where he died. And so neither one of them is helpful in that regard, which is too bad because I don't have another death piece of information. So I'm going to, let me just teach you one other thing real quickly. You can, if you want to organize your things nicely, you can just drag and put 1920 before 1940. If he was married in 1917, you can drag it in front of 1920, and now you have them ordered. You can also have the computer kind of do it for you. So that's an important skill as well to learn. Well, we've mined a fair amount of information off of here. The only other thing that I was wondering about, the Nebraska marriages didn't give me parents. Remember, this is where I might have found some parents. A lot of times the marriage records do have it. This one doesn't. And so I'm going to, I'm frustrated at that, but I'm wondering, who was he living with in 1940 or 1920? If I click on the 1920 census, I see that he's 27, he's married, and so he is with Mabel, and he's got a son named Harold. And that makes sense because when I look at his detail page, Harold is the son and Mabel is the wife. When I come back to that, to my sources, I've got a 1940 census record. Clicking on that, if he was married in 1917, he had Harold in 1918 about, and then he had a Betty, but it was, a long time later. And I don't know what the story is about that, but for some reason he did have a daughter who was born in Wyoming quite a length of time later. And so I want to put in Betty L. Bross, who was born in 1931, because I subtract 9 from 40, and was born in Wyoming. So I'm going to come back now to Ara's person page. And to add a person, all you need to do is say, okay, Ara and Mabel had another child. I'm going to add that child. And it was Betty L. B-R-A-U-S-E. She was a female. And at this point, I don't know if she's deceased because she was born late enough that she's within the 110-year limit. So if I don't have proof, I just say that she's living. And she was born in Wyoming. And so I'm going to put, I was going to put 1931. And then I click it to standardize it, you notice. And then here, Wyoming, again, it does it right, Wyoming, United States. And so I go ahead and click it, and it's now standardized. And then I just go ahead and put next. It says, I entered this, they didn't find anybody else. I go ahead and create the person. And now I've added a child to Harold and as children to Ara and Mabel. And so all of that information was already available, but somebody didn't mine it when they put it in there. Now, in addition, I have over here some more records. I've got a Pennsylvania County marriage record, and if I look at that, it says, okay, so this is for Harold, and the wife is going to be named Mabel. So let's see here. No, Anna, I'm sorry. The spouse's name is Anna. Parents' name are Mabel and Ara. And so this is one of those records that we wish was like, if we had this type of record for Ara when he married Mabel, it would list his parents. and we could put them in. But in this instance, we can't. I'm not going to, well, I'll go ahead and attach this real quickly. What happens when you attach a record like this is it comes in, and the record information is on the left and your information is on the right. And so you see we don't pick up much from this. All it does, I'm just going to say the reason we're attaching this source is that it verifies family relations. And then I'll attach it. And then I can compare the wife and the same thing, and it's already, I've already typed in, and so it just stays there, and I attach that. And then Harold. Now there will be more information about Harold, or I thought there would at least, but there doesn't appear to be much. But he's the one that actually got married, and so I'll attach that as well. That's how easy it is to attach a record hint. We attached a source to 3 different people that quickly. I'm going to go back to ARA now, and we had another record hint, which was World War I draft record. So when I click on it, it comes up and shows me the indexed information that is in there. And it gives me a date of 28 July 1892, where all that I had was 1892. And so I think I want this. My question is, he was born in Knoxville, and so this matches perfectly. And I would think with ARA L, so Leroy instead of ARA L, if I say that this definitely is him, I can add in Leroy for his name, and I can add in 28 July for his birth. And I think that I like that. I can look at the picture and see if maybe Mabel is listed as a wife. That's the one thing that happens sometimes. And what I get instead is that Ara is living he's in Nebraska though at this time, and that's where they were married. Let me show you that. They were married in Nebraska, so it would make sense in a World War I draft registration that he would be living in Nebraska. So again, that fits perfectly. And we have him married, but we don't have any information about his wife's name, which is too bad. And so there's enough of different correlations there that I'm going to go ahead and accept this. And so I will come and I'm going to go ahead and attach that record hint. And you can see that if you have a piece of information that you don't have over here, you can swing it across and add it, the military draft information. Now I wish that I would be able to just swing across this birth date over here. However, this isn't standardized as well in terms of having the county in there. So I'm going to have to just go back and remember to change 28 July on the birth and Leroy on the name. And so all I put in here, the reason I'm attaching the source is that it verifies birth and name. And then I'll attach it. Now I'm going to come back up to ARA, and I'm going to remember now to come to his name. I'm going to click Edit, and I'm going to change it from L to Leroy, and I'm going to say verified on World War I draft registration. And then I will save it. So now we've completed his name, and then I want to change this birth, and so I edit it. I come up here, and I'm just going to change that to, 28 July 1892, and then I need to go ahead and click what is down here, and then it becomes standardized, and the computer says I can read it. And then I'm going to say here, verified on World War I draft registration. And then I save it. So now we've got a good birth date, we've got a good name, we never did get a death date, and we never did get parents added, but we did add a child. So in that amount of time, just using those sources, we were able to make some major changes. And if you were Ara, wouldn't you have been grateful for somebody that's taking you to the temple to pause and spend that amount of time refining that information, adding two sources to the proof about you, and caring enough? I now, just in that little time, know that he was married right around World War I. I can look back and imagine what life was like for him. I can imagine the birth of their first child being right there in the Spanish flu epidemic, World War I. I can think of this young family struggling in that very difficult time in history, and then wonder about why they had so long between children. And I don't know the answer to that, but that's an interesting thing for me to know too. And so I'm comfortable with him, and I believe that I know him better than I would have. And now when I take him to the temple, I'm going to be excited to do his work, and I'll think of him as more than just a name, but as a person. I will mention one other thing that you could do to find out more information. This is more just teaching the tool, but over here we have these links, and when you click on one of these from the person page, what happens is the information you have over here is taken and used in a search in Ancestry or Find My Past or My Heritage or whatever. And you also will notice that there's a family search link. If you go there, see, record hints are 97% accurate. There are other sources on family search that probably match your person, but aren't 97% confirmed. And so a record hint's almost always right. These you have to kind of carefully sift through to determine. Let me just show you. If I click on Ancestry, it uses that information that I had. For some reason it's not showing it here, but it used it, and it comes over, and I've got a World War II draft registration card. That's kind of interesting, and you can then attach this, and this is interesting. If I show you the actual card again, you'll notice that his place of residence at this point is Cowpit Sublette, Wyoming. And when he died in Sublette, Wyoming. And so in World War II, we've found a record that matches, and the exact birth date, 28 July. I mean, we already knew it was him, but this, again, just confirms our using that first source of the World War I, that the July 28th of 1892 is right, because by the time World War II rolls around, he's moved to Wyoming, and that's where he's probably, I could probably even put in the state Wyoming as the place where he died, but since I don't know that for sure, I'm not going to put that. If I were going to add this source, I would just do a quick little thing called Record Seek, where I end up adding this app. You'll need to go and look at Record Seek and add it, but what you do is you click on the information that you want to add. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy that information, and after I copy it, I undo the blue, and then I go up and click a thing called Record Seek. And when I click that, a box comes up that says, you want to create a source, do you want to create it in Family Search or Ancestry? And I say, I want to create it in Family Search. And then it makes this beautiful source that has a great title, the URL to it, where the record is found, and then I can describe the record in my notes. And that's why I copied that information, because I'm just going to paste that now. And you see how nicely ordered that is and everything. And so then what I do is I go ahead and I click Next, and it says, okay, who do you want to add this to? And so I've got to go back to Ara, and I need to take his number, and I need to copy that, and then I need to go back to the Record Seek box, and right here I'm going to paste in that number. And then I'm going to click next, and it says, oh, you want to attach it to R. Leroy Browse, you know, and then why? Well, verifies birth information. I think that's all that it really proves, although it's useful in other ways. And so this verifies his name, it verifies his birth, but it doesn't verify his death. It does verify his gender, and then I close it. Now, you notice I tagged it manually, where when you add a record hint, the record hints are automatically tagged. Then I create and attach that source, and it is now created. So when I go back to my ARA and I refresh the page, I now have 8 sources, and that top source is going to be his World War II draft record, and this is how beautiful that source looks, because we used Record Seek to attach it from Ancestry. So that's another skill that's nice to have. Now, if I conclude that I've done all that I feel like I can to improve the information about ARA, I give up on finding his parents or the death place because it's just not coming to me very easily, it's time to go ahead and now take him to the temple. Normally I would come up to the Ordinances tab, and when I click that, it's been requested and shared with the temple, and I can't access it from his person page. These are still all locked down in the temple, waiting for the temple to pass them out to somebody when they come. What I've got to do is go back to where I found Aura on my Ordinances Ready, and so in between when I discovered him through Ordinances Ready, I now have gone to his name on the person page and gathered him, and at this point I'm not going to use these other 3 because I've not taken the time to gather their information. I don't know how I feel about if I can do better by them, and so I want to wait to take them to the temple. But at this point I can now go ahead and request his baptism and confirmation and take that to the temple. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to our tools that we talked about, and what we need to remember is I demonstrated how to use posted sources and showed you that we picked up birthplace, we picked up a daughter in those posted sources. We, with the record hints, were able to improve the birth date. We were able to prove the birth date from partner sites when we went to Ancestry. We experienced adding and changing information, and we standardized information. We added a family member with that daughter. We didn't merge a duplicate, and you'll need to learn that process because you will run into duplicates. But imagine how meaningful that is to have multiple versions of a person in the tree, and you clean that up and turn all those 3 people into one, and make it so that we're not having different people or different versions of the same person having ordinances done for all 3 people. The last thing that we didn't spend any time with was getting help, and so let me go ahead and end with that. When you run into a problem of any kind and you don't know what to do to solve it, there are these helps available. If you click on the Help button at the top right, you've got Contact Us, and the Contact Us says you've got a local family history center that you can contact. You've got temple and family history consultants in your ward that you can contact. And then that information about your family history center, the closest one. You can send a message to them. You can live chat with them, or you can call them. This number is really quite interesting because the restoration of the church was April 6, 1830. And so if you want to remember how to call Family Search, you just have to remember the 866, and then you've got 406, 1830. So that's a great way to get some help if you run into something that you don't know how to fix. You want to, especially if there's some of that ordinance problem where it seems like they need to flip a switch in Salt Lake rather than something you can do. Sometimes there's issues like you're wanting to merge two people and one's a male and one's a female, and you have to have Salt Lake approve the sex change on that. And so those are ways. I wanted to also show you at the bottom of every page is a feedback link, and you can give them a suggestion or a compliment, but the problem lets you put in the issue that you have, and then when you write in there, then you can send it off and they'll get back and respond to you about the issue that you were working on. So it's important for you to understand those sources of help as well. There's also a lot of different sources of help in terms of training that are available both inside of Family Search and outside of Family Search. And so you might just do some Google searches and find some training videos that are available that help with these different skills that we've talked about. This Rexburg Family History Center has several training videos that are attached to it. The BYU-Idaho has training that's available as well on its BYU-Idaho Family History Training videos in YouTube. The best location that you can find help for almost anything that you want to do tied to family history is the BYU Library, Family History Library. They have many tutorials and various helps, many of them that are hour-long presentations on a topic to really get you so that you can feel like an expert in a given subject. There's all sorts of sources. Depending on your needs and your interests, look them up and you'll be able to receive the help that you need. The important thing to stress at this point is gathering in between discovery and connection empowers you, and it will change this from being a clerk's job to being a detective's job, and you'll come to love it so much more. It's not that hard to master these skills, but once you've mastered them, you will love helping your ancestors have the ordinances that they need when they're ready for those ordinances.